Welcome to Melt University. This series will help you build your brand, inform you on a variety of career paths, and introduce you to top executives in sports and marketing. Now, here's your host, the president and CEO of Melt, one of the largest independent sports and event marketing agencies in the country, Vince Thompson.
Welcome back, students. Virtual Melt University. We are rolling into the fall. Hopefully you're back on your campuses, safely in your dorms, classrooms, fraternity houses, sorority houses, listening to this. But today we have a very special guest, an individual whom I've always admired as a person and professionally. Even though he's at the highest rungs in the sports world with ESPN, he's always taking the time to respond to crazy emails and crazy calls and crazy requests, and just a very, very kind soul. So he really actually walks the walk and talks the talk from a values perspective. Burke Magnus is EVP of Programming and Scheduling for the worldwide leader, ESPN. And I have followed his ascent, I think damn near since I've met him, probably back in the early 2000s. But it's just amazing in his role now, and influences so many things that you see on television and online and in the palm of your hand. And we're going to talk about today his view on the future of sports, his view of where these amazing opportunities are for you as a college student. He's been instrumental in pretty much everything that you have seen on the network, particularly as it relates to college. All of his amazing work with the CFP, his amazing work with the NCAA, launching ESPNU. ESPN Original Entertainment, the Great Dale Earnhardt documentary, Bracket Busters, basketball, college game day. I mean, you name it. Sports Business Journal 40 under 40. Graduate of Holy Cross 1988. But for some reason, he looks a hell of a lot younger than I am, and so he tends not to age at all, and keeps that youthful vital about. He got two students, two kids, two college students. So what he's going to say today is very, very relatable. But Burke Magnus, welcome to Virtual Melt University. We're glad and honored to have you.
Vince, thanks very much. Really happy to be here, and thank you for doing this. I mean, this is an incredible, like you said, as a parent of two college students who will soon be in, the marketplace for their professional careers. This is a great thing that you guys have undertaken here, and really appreciate you doing it.
Well, thank you so much. And obviously, you guys, not only the worldwide leader in sports, but you have launched so many careers, thousands of kids, their dream is to be at ESPN. We've heard some great stories. We've had Reese Davis on this summer. We've had David Pollock this summer. And, Reese talked about, getting his job from a payphone in Columbus, Ohio. I mean, just amazing stories. But before, and obviously, the SEC network, the ACC network, so many opportunities for kids on college campuses. We talk about, the college campus, and then it's all going to come back post-COVID as the ultimate professional lab. And we'll have you talk about that in just a moment. But when we start with our guests, we like to sort of throw it all the way back to your formative years, your growing up years, your passion. So on the campus of Holy Cross and then subsequently UMass, and then you had some, amazing internships with CBS Sports. But where was this? I mean, because to me, your job is hard. It's probably hard. It's more complex than anything in the world, but also for everybody, it's a dream job. But where did this initial passion ignite around sports? And then how were you able to channel that into this illustrious career?
Yeah, that's a great place to start with everybody, because passion to me is the key to really a successful professional career. You've got to be able to love what you do. There's that old cliche: if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. Mm-hmm. And that's true. I still to this day don't regularly wear a watch, because it doesn't matter to me what day or time it is. I don't ever look at the clock thinking, when is this day going to be over? I mean, sure, it's work and it's a job, and ESPN's like any other company where there's highs and lows. But if you really have a passion for what you do, things tend to come easier. It stands to reason, but so many people discount that. And frankly, I had a hard time coming to admitting that to myself when I
Right.
was getting started, because I felt like I wasn't special.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like everybody I knew, every kid I knew from the neighborhood, my whole social circle, all my college buddies, everybody loved sports, right? I mean, I
Right.
gravitated towards those people. That was a shared interest. So I didn't think that it made me particularly unique, right? So when it
Mm-hmm.
came to um, trying to choose a career path, um, I really was at a loss because I didn't know how to get started. But I did know this. I did know that the only thing I really ever cared about in a way that was beyond everything else was sports.
Right.
And
Right.
and so it took me a couple of years after undergrad to admit that to myself. I didn't have any
Mm-hmm.
connections in the industry, as you know, even to this day with the growth over the last 25, 30 years. It's still a relatively small industry, all things
It
considered.
is. Really is.
And so I didn't know how to get started. I had no connections. So that's actually what led me to UMass. I was a
Mm-hmm.
history major at Holy Cross, which I absolutely loved the course of study, and I got a great liberal
Were you going
arts.
to go to law school? Was
I
that
was,
ever?
yeah, yeah. I now describe law school as the best thing I never did. Um,
Right.
but
Right.
yeah, that was,
Yeah. The world certainly needs more lawyers.
yeah, exactly. That was, by the way, I had sort of had a nagging feeling that I wouldn't be a very good one.
Right. Right. Right.
So I wasn't committed, but that's back to the passion, right?
Right.
Was that
Right.
going to be what I want? Was that what was going to get me out of bed for the next 30, 35 years,
Mm-hmm.
in terms of a professional career. And in those moments where you're honest with yourself, I couldn't commit.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's when I actually pivoted. I found out about, the sports management program at UMass. I looked into it a little bit. I had no idea what it was at the time. This was the early 90s. The discipline of sport management, which is such a big thing now, and
Mm-hmm.
there's undergraduate majors at all these universities and everything else. That it was none of that. It was basically, UMass and Ohio University, and that was it. And
Mm-hmm.
it was different, right? It wasn't really as much about the professional business industry. It was more about truly sports administration, people who wanted to be,
Right.
athletic directors or parks and recreation, people in local towns or states or communities. There was a small strain of us who were interested in turning it into a professional career. And really, for me, it was about getting those contacts, that I could then, get in front of some people and try and get a job. And I learned a lot along the way, in terms of the coursework that was tailored towards the sports industry, which was invaluable. But more than anything, it was a way to get contacts in the industry, and so, it worked for me in that regard. But ultimately, to your point, your original point, like, it took me a couple years after undergrad to really say, okay, what is my passion and how do I turn
Right.
that into a career? I knew what it was. I knew the answer to the first part of that question, but I admitted it to myself, and then I dedicated myself to getting, um, getting a career started that would pursue that passion.
Mhm. And so, how did you? Because obviously, and our kids will laugh at us, and our children will laugh at us. But the sophistication of technology back in the '80s. I mean, even I came out of Auburn in '84, and
Yeah.
I mean, cable was in 10 million homes. And Turner offered me a job at $14,000 a year in Atlanta. I'm like, well, there's no way in the world I can live on this. And so I didn't take it. Obviously, a mistake, but it wasn't the lens of which our kids look at it through now. And so you land this internship at CBS Sports, and back in the day,
Yeah.
and they still are, but that's the Tiffany Network. I mean, it was NFL and Masters, and how did you wind up landing there? Because that's a big deal.
Yeah, and having grown up in northern New Jersey and spent a lot of time I was born in New York City. So like the idea that I was at, a television network in their sports division, working on some of the, biggest and best sports. By the way, a lot of their portfolio is the same today, like NFL, Masters, NCAA tournament, PGA Tour golf, you named it. So Masters. So, like it was incredible, but, and I would have frankly loved to stay there for many, many years, but
Right.
my internship, happened to coincide with CBS losing their NFL rights package to Fox.
And
Which
by the way, that was a big story back then.
it was gigantic because Fox was an upstart network. They were
Right.
the fourth of four by a wide margin in terms of, they were sort of the rebel. They had no legitimacy at the time, so to speak. I'm quite certain the other networks all looked down on them, and said it was never possible. But they made a bold move, and they got the NFC package from CBS that they still hold to this day, and it really created Fox Broadcast Network and Fox Sports as we know it today. But at that time, being an intern at CBS and seeing the faces of 20-year veterans who had
God.
worked there, looking like this was the end, a death blow kind
Yeah.
of for so many people. I was quick. I quickly, I can be kind of perceptive at times. So my perception, my instincts told me, you know what, I
Right.
don't think there's going to be a job here at the end of this
Right.
internship. And but I love the people there. I worked for great people. I did interesting things, and even though it didn't turn into a job, everybody I met there, both internally and externally, really helped. Were critical in getting me to the next step, which ultimately was, a job at ESPN about a year
Well,
and a
that
half
I mean,
later.
you still probably have lifelong friends out of that.
Oh, no doubt. Yeah, no doubt. And so, but again, like to all the students out there, like when the internship was over and I knew, okay, this was it. This is where I want to be in this industry. At the time, it was TV, sports television.
Sure.
Now it's sports media. Um, it took me an entire year to get into ESPN. And so, it wasn't like I could snap my fingers with this great internship on my dossier and say, okay, I can write my ticket now. No, I was starting from scratch, but at least I had something. I knew people. I had people who were invested in helping me. I had this on my resume. I had, my degrees, obviously, and it was the beginning, but it still wasn't easy after that point. And you really got to stay committed and do the hard work to make it happen. Get in front of as many people as you can. Do informational interviews. Do whatever is necessary. Whatever anybody asks you to do, the answer should be yes.
Yeah. Spot. Well, and we when we tell our students a lot, I think you'll echo this, is that everybody wants to be in sports and entertainment profession. It's very glamorous, very sexy from the outside, and I'm going to confess, like getting paid to go to game day every week is a hell of a gig for me, and you getting paid to go to where you get to go is a great gig for you. But in this COVID and post-COVID, hopefully one day, entry-level internship job market, it's going to be brutal in our space because so many people have become unemployed with experience. They're willing to get back in and take a lesser job for a lesser salary.
Yep.
And it's going to further compress the job market. And so we're talking to our kids like, hey, you're going to get told no a million times. Don't take that rejection personally. Even where you are now, you don't always get told yes, even at the top level of ESPN in the top rung. But talk about how you got your foot in the door at ESPN, and talk about the advice you're gonna give to our students about what to expect out there right now, because we're not sugarcoating it. We want them to understand, hey, look, it's going to be brutal out there, but if you work and grind like Burke Magnus, you'll create a scene in there. You'll create something will happen for you.
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, listen, this is not an ideal moment in time. and everything will be compressed. That's a great point. But the sports industry and sports media has always been difficult to get into, way more difficult than I think a more conventional business environment. Um, and so even in 1994, 95, when I was getting started at ESPN, the process, the competition for the ability to collect, a robust salary of $21,000, which was my
Right.
first salary at ESPN. And by the way, I had been out of college for let's see, 7 years at that point.
Wow.
So I worked for a couple of years after undergrad, before grad school, and then did CBS, and then a year to ESPN. So like I was, I was starting over in many ways. The jobs I had prior to grad school, while they were not my passion, uh, actually delivered me, a nice income every 2 weeks. I just didn't want to do them for 30 years.
Right.
So, I took a tremendous pay cut to get into sports television at that time, but I was happy to do so because
Right.
that's where I wanted to be. But it's always been super competitive. I guess I would say this: the number one thing I think that kids can try and demonstrate if they get an opportunity to be in front of somebody or on the phone with somebody is um, an incredible work ethic goes without saying. Like you have to just be willing to do the hard work and grind and not and set your expectations appropriately. And then versatility, like I think is key, right? I sit with so many kids these days, and I don't mean to sound like an old timer when I say that, but I
Right.
sit with a lot of kids who are just getting started out, and they have a very, very specific notion of what they want to be doing, which
Right. Right.
yeah,
Right.
which is great. Like I'm not discouraging. Like have a vision for yourself. Have a roadmap. But do not be do not hesitate to deviate if there's an opportunity, even if it wasn't exactly what you drew up. Right. I mean, ESPN. When we do a lot of sports, as you know, right? Not everybody can work on college football. Not everybody can work on the NBA or Monday Night Football. Like, we need people to work on uh, figure skating and
Yeah.
bowling and, auto racing. And, not that these things are not important, but obviously, and they're great business, but, like one of the big breaks I got early in my career at ESPN was to work on motorsports. And you're
Mhm.
talking to a kid who was born in New York City, grew up in northern New Jersey, and I was interviewing to take over management of the NASCAR relationship and
Right.
NHRA
Right.
and IndyCar and all that. And to say I was a fish out of water was like an understatement. But you know what? And never in a million years would I have said, oh yeah, that's what I want to do. But it was an opportunity. It presented itself. It was a step up. It was more responsibility. And you know what? I came to absolutely love NASCAR, Formula One, IndyCar,
Wow.
you
Wow.
know,
That's a great story.
NHRA. And so like don't like do not get too precious
I love it. I
about
love it.
where you see yourself, because opportunity comes in all different forms and fashions. It presents itself to you in different ways. And don't rule anything out just because of your own personal vision.
Well, you just summed up one of our core tenets of Mill University. Life is not linear,
Yeah.
and your path is going to be your path, correct?
Yeah.
And always be willing to dive in the deep end and push yourself out of your comfort zone. And we had an amazing interview with Commissioner Sankey of the SEC, and he went from Syracuse, New York,
Mm-hmm.
to Podunk, Louisiana, to take his first job.
Yep.
And what impressed me is like I wanted to push myself out of the comfort zone. Talk about that a little bit.
Really important because it creates growth, I think, in people,
Grow, yeah.
right? And And
Right on.
if you stay in this safe space, and you never get uncomfortable, you never stretch yourself, and listen, we've all been in the position where, you kind of almost have to fake it a little bit, right?
Yep.
Confidence.
Fake it till you make it, right?
Yeah. And you know what? I'm not saying irresponsibly, but I'm saying,
Yeah.
responsibly, like push yourself and challenge yourself, and really, get yourself into a position where, if risk reward, right? And
Right.
put yourself out there, and you're going to grow, and you're going to get opportunities, and it breeds confidence, and it breeds, like I said, versatility, and to me, it's absolutely, an essential, um, you know, moment in everyone's career. Not just moment, but multiple moments, right? The beauty of what I just described and what you just described is that it's going to present itself to you over and over and over again.
Right.
And I think the
Right.
people that progress are the ones that never, really shy away from being uncomfortable like that.
Right. So let's fast forward a little bit. You sit on this amazing perch on the forefront of everything that's going on in sports, as ESPN always is. And uh, talk about, because one thing that we talk to our students a lot about, and they just don't recognize it. They wouldn't know how to recognize it, but when they're on a college campus, they're surrounded by the greatest professional laboratory that they'll ever be surrounded by in their life.
Yeah.
Where do you see the future jobs, not only emanating out of ESPN, because obviously you guys are the lead innovator, but where do you see these jobs going? Because we've interviewed a lot of athletic directors, and they've talked about, hey, there's jobs in mental health, and there's jobs in data analytics and analytics and safe experiences at venues and things that you and I were exposed to during our times at college. From where the perch you sit, and obviously ESPN has millions and millions of dollars invested in networks on campuses and things like Auburn and North Carolina.
Yeah.
Where do you see those jobs heading, and what do our students need to be doing now to prepare to win those jobs?
That's a great question. I mean, again, this is a very interesting moment at time. I feel like we're at a crossroads in a way, in the media business. Not only do you have, sort of this pivot towards, that we're doing and others are doing towards a direct to consumer environment for sports. Listen, at the end of the day, sports, like anything else, or like entertainment or music or art, is content, right? And I think the winners and losers are going to be the ones that figure out how to deliver, the most desirable content to as many
Right.
people, as possible, and get them to pay for it for as long as possible.
Right.
And the technology will continue to enable, different, ways to do that. Different business models will emerge. Television, while it gets a bad rap because it's fashionable
Right.
sort of, get makes for a good copy, as they say, um, is still by far and away the
Right.
most preferred way for sports fans to consume content. We have a saying at ESPN, which is the best available screen is what people will
I
gravitate
love that.
towards.
I love that. Yep.
If you're in your home and it's NFL Sunday, you're gonna fire up the 60-inch, flat screen HD, and if you're at the mall or you're running errands or you're at a wedding reception on a Saturday, and the college football game's on, you're going to take your phone out of your pocket and do the best you can, and that's going to be your solution. And so, I think in sports, technology, expertise is going to become,
Right.
a premium. I think, data and analytics, you mentioned, not only are, informing the sports fans' experience from an informational perspective, but now there's also the legalized gambling, aspect of it, which is just going
Right.
to it's going to continue to get, bigger and broader as that, rolls out nationwide, and it will. So I think content, the definition of content, when you and I were growing up was very linear in terms of, okay, here's a game, it's produced at a high level, it's presented in a singular fashion, and I hope you enjoy it. That is completely different now, even for the highest caliber events that we distribute, like the CFP. We're looking for multiple ways to do it. Give people choices. Give people second screens, third screens. Heck, we give them 20 screens sometimes
Right.
on things like the CFP, where fans might care for a particular presentation. So optionality from a content perspective is going to continue to be to develop and ultimately be at a premium. So again, I think ESPN is very much still a roll up your sleeves
Right.
meritocracy, hardworking, little engine that could culture.
People don't really still realize that, but that's rooted in your founding.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, like what I like to say is, because George Bodenheimer, our former president,
Yeah.
actually used the children's book, the little engine that could, for
Yeah.
many years in the way he described ESPN. And what I'm fond of saying now is, like, we still have that culture, even though it ceased being true a long time ago, in terms of we're so enormous now. But it really still permeates the culture of the people that work there, which is and Mike Slive said this to me one time, which I thought was one of the greatest compliments our company has ever received, which is, um, he said, you guys are Hertz, but you think you're Avis.
Wow.
And that the old Avis slogan of "We try harder."
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And he's like, you're the leader, but you behave like the insurgent. And I thought that was a great way to put it, which is, and that's the culture of our company,
Yeah.
is really just just down to earth, hard work, innovation, creativity, caring, and care and respect for our people. That, like, that's to me. I'm rambling a little bit away from the
No,
essence
no,
of your
no, no,
question.
no. You put Commissioner Mike Slive, former SEC Commissioner Mike Slive, rest his soul, is one of the most amazing people. And
Yeah.
but it's funny. No matter what ESPN executive I deal with versus the other networks, maybe other than Turner, because they're sort of rooted in entrepreneurship as well.
Yeah.
It's that work ethic. There's I could call you up and say, hey, I'm thinking about this on game day. You take the call, you return the call. That doesn't happen everywhere. And so, and even at that level, but so to your point, and I love what you said, the definition of content is continuing to ever evolve. And think about it, the wagering, the fantasy, the prop bets within wagering. And my son, I hate to admit this, my son's 20 years old. He's a very sophisticated wagerer. I mean, that's what they do.
Yeah.
It's a common knowledge from that, and I think that's amazing. And you mentioned one thing that we talk about a lot, and I want you to elaborate on this. Is I want you to stress the importance of networking and relationships. We tell our students every day, hey, look, every relationship, whether it's personal or professional, you've got to nurture it like a plant or a flower, or in water and trim it and give it sunlight and fertilize it. And particularly, people think in our industry it's such a vast industry. It's really not. But like you and I have maintained a really nice relationship over the years. We may not talk, every year or once a year. I'll see you at Final Four or something like that. But we've always maintained, a really nice, integrity of the relationship. And I want our kids, because I don't think they hear it enough and understand it, and they also have the tools. At the end of the day, you and I have to go to the library and dig up the yellow pages and resource books to track somebody down.
Yeah.
It's in the palm of their hand now. So talk about, from your view, the importance of these relationships, because clearly, even going from CBS into ESPN, you're still in business with people that you were in business with when you were an intern. And similar with
Yeah.
me as well, Paul Feinbaum and some of those people.
Yeah, exactly right. Really, really important. I think there's an added element to what you just said, which is um, I find that people sometimes focus on, and this is more for people once they get into a professional environment,
Mm-hmm.
but too often they focus on external relationships and they don't focus enough on internal relationships.
That's great.
And I think you got to remember that. And I'm not just talking about managing up. I'm talking about your peers and your colleagues, and you never know what opportunities are going to present themselves, and what which people are going to be involved. And it's simple. It's just how you treat people, and ultimately that comes back to you in droves. If you really put the effort in on your end. I mean, I'm in a position, and have been for years as my career has developed at ESPN. I'm sort of a very external relationship focused because
Right.
of the work that I do, primarily business partnerships, rights acquisitions, rights renewals, partner management, et cetera. So my relationship, and not just with the head honcho, not just with
Yeah.
the commissioner level people, but everybody, right? And because again, it really is a small industry, and you never know which small conference commissioner is going to be the next big conference commissioner, or which number two is going to be the number one, or
Yeah.
so but even outside of a self-serving way, I think there's a human element to it, which is just that and I've always tried to operate with integrity,
Mm-hmm.
and understanding that what goes around comes around. And so you really I find you just get a lot more benefit by the way you treat people, than if you're either overly competitive or unnecessarily adversarial, which
Right.
we've always seen those type of people. but
Right.
but yeah, it's really, really important. I don't think it can be. And then when you get into if your career progresses and you get into a management position or a leadership position where people are looking to you for
Right.
leadership, and they and are watching how you conduct yourself in meetings or treat people in the cafeteria or in the bathroom, like
Right.
that
Right.
that that becomes how they form their impression of how you're succeeding or failing in your own leadership capabilities. So it just permeates everything ultimately all the time, right?
That you're right about that. And then transitioning from a worker bee to upper management to being a leader, that is a very, very difficult. It's one of the hardest things I've ever done in my career, and still is. But I think the golden rule still, at the end of the day, does apply. So
And we've all
we've had a
seen
lot.
and we've all seen
Go ahead.
like we've all seen people with tremendous technical capabilities who just hit a wall because they don't know how to
Right.
interact properly with people, right? and
Right.
and so to the extent that is your aspiration ultimately, that's part of it. That's one of the tools necessary. You can't just be technically proficient at your job. That only takes you so far.
Mhm. Well, it's funny you say that, because one of the things that we talk about to our students a lot about in prepping them for this interview process and the internship and the job, and it's really going to be a lot harder because you're going to have to be doing a lot of this through a virtual environment or a Zoom environment. One thing we always talk about is seek emotional cues
Hmm.
in the person you're interviewing. So, for instance, know about Burke's background, know about where his kids are in college, because that's showing they've made the effort to take that effort to learn. And secondly, they're softening you up a little bit, not just diving in as a dilettante or a mercenary into, hey, I want to work at ESPN, and my pet peeve is, oh my God, Vince, I love sports. I want to go to work for Melt. I'm like, well, that's great. Everybody pretty much does. But how are you going
Right.
to bring value to the organization, right?
Yes. Yes. Totally right.
I
And
mean,
that
what is that something that gets your attention? Like, hey, Mr. Magnus, congrats on your success. This is how I believe I can bring value to ESPN, right?
Yeah, you got to have a point of view. You have to have done the work. By the way, it might be wrong. I've heard plenty of people tell tales about how many interviews they had before
Right.
something hits. So be true to yourself, right? So
Correct.
don't try and make something true that isn't true. But
Correct.
I think you got to have a point of view. You got to demonstrate how you're going to bring value, like you said. You got to say, hey, here's something that maybe have you guys thought of this? And it might be an unrealistic idea, or it might be not feasible for a variety of reasons that
Mhm.
you as an entry level person might have no visibility into, but that's fine,
Right.
because the guy on the other side of the desk or the woman on the other side of the desk is not thinking to themselves that you should have a working expertise of their
Right.
business from
Right.
stem to stern, right? Like, just put forward ideas, think about how you might create value, demonstrate things beyond just your own personal interest.
But you know what that shows, and you just pointed it out. At least they're thinking about your business,
Yeah,
and every interaction with Burke Magnus is a form of an audition. And at some point, you're going to say, "Man, this person would make a great employee and a
yeah,
great team member and a great worker because, I mean, you're taking a risk on them. You're investing, thousands of dollars of Disney's and shareholder money in their career, and so every decision we make, and I'm investing money out of my pocket." So that's what we tell our students is we're like, hey, this is only as important as you make it. You've got to
yeah,
do the diligence. You've got to put it out there. So this has been great. We like to have a little fun while when we wrap these things up. A couple things,
yeah.
and it doesn't have to be like a traditional source, but are there any books that you've read that have influenced you, podcasts you listen to now that would continue to help our kids? We've heard a lot about John Wooden in this process. A lot of our guests are like, hey, I still read John Wooden's book, but are there go-to things that you would recommend our students read or listen to?
I'm a big fan of Jim Miller's writing.
Uh
Not
huh.
not not because not only because he wrote the ESPN book, but he wrote a wonderful book on the creation of Creative Artist Agency, a
Yep.
CAA,
Yep.
which CAA now is a major player in the sports business.
Yep.
The book's called Powerhouse. It's basically the most fascinating part for me was the creation of this incredibly iconic Hollywood entertainment agency, which has now morphed into sports, obviously, but it's more about
Mm-hmm.
the creation of it from the beginning. And I just love his style because it's kind of oral history.
Some guys have all the fun, but
Yeah,
Powerhouse. I mean,
yeah,
I aspired to be an agent. So Mike Ovitz was like one of my early,
yeah,
I was an early disciple I was fascinated by it all. But I do think Jim Miller, and I think CAA. If our listeners don't, you need to follow CAA and Creative Artists Agency, and obviously now they've morphed into this big behemoth. But I love Jim Miller as well.
yeah.
Anything else that kind of sticks out?
Um, Gosh, I end up reading so much industry stuff now
We
that
do. I bet you read probably like me 40 to 50 to 60 of these a day, or they're bombing you. They're bombing you all day, and you've got this massive stable of talent, and they have their platforms as well. So
yeah,
we never are really able to rest anymore, which
yeah,
is a
no.
good thing and a bad thing. I mean, it's like you never have time to think because we're already on the spot. So as we
And by
wrap,
the way,
okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
and Vince, my like the time I spend away from work, I tend to listen to things that are completely unrelated. Like I'm a big live music fan, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
I listen to, like, music podcasts, and I don't play any instrument or anything like that. I'm just like a kind of a music nerd. So
All right, I'm the same way. I'm the same way.
I read like Relics magazine and crazy stuff like that, and try and find out when the next. By the way, that's another industry that has been absolutely
Oh,
decimated,
oh.
by COVID. So
I was
I'm
reading about
hopeful.
Live Nation today. I mean, it's a disaster.
Yeah, I
Uh,
hope. I can't wait for that to come back. Because that really is when I'm it's crazy to think like, because we all go to so many sporting events, that I would want to find myself in big crowds of people in my free time. But when
Right.
when it's a great band playing that I love, there's nothing better for me.
Right. I'm right there with you. So I'm going to put you on the spot one time before we wrap. Of
Okay.
all the famous sporting events and athletes and everything you've ever attended, is there one favorite that sticks out from everything? Like one play, one game? I mean, I've got 1,000 of them. Most of them relate to Auburn, but anything, like one favorite thing?
Well, let me do this if I can. I'm gonna fudge my answer. Well, the one of the favorite event that I was at in person, just in terms of the memorable, part of it, was that 2005 Rose Bowl national
I
championship.
knew you were going to say
USA.
that. I knew. And by the way, I still watch that game.
Yeah, and it's ironic that my son now goes to USC, but
Right.
because that was just such a
Ah,
iconic game. I mean, Vince Young, Reggie Bush, the star power on that field was incredible.
right.
I've never seen a football game like it to this day.
The energy too was just you could feel the energy coming through the screen.
Yeah, but I mention it because it also took place at one of my favorite places in the world, which is the Rose Bowl Stadium, right? And so I tend to be a little bit of a traditionalist. Like,
Yeah.
my absolute, sort of pantheon of events is maybe not what you would think it would be, but for me, it's like the Masters, Wimbledon, and the Rose Bowl. Like, those are my top.
The hallowed grounds.
Yeah, those are my top three.
Will fans come back? Will they come back when we're able to come back? Do you think they'll come back?
Oh, they'll come back. Yeah, they'll come back. I mean, listen, there's still nothing like being at a big game in person, and that it might be different for a period of time. But technology continues to enable like the in-person experience too. Like,
Right.
and so I think it's just going to get better and better to be there.
I agree with that.
And listen, media is gonna be ubiquitous. Sports content is just going to get broader and broader. You're going to be able to see anything globally almost at any time, either live or on demand, as technology continues to broaden the sports fans experience and make everything available. But you got to be there. I mean, people have to be there ultimately, and that's whether that's in a stadium or at a tailgate or at a college game day or whatever. I don't see that. I don't see that going away permanently.
Well, it's interesting, and I've been talking to my clients a lot about this, and I've talked to athletic directors and mayors. I'm like, don't think people aren't coming into these college towns right now, even just to be a part of it. Like I'm sitting here thinking, like, I don't really have any true business at Auburn, but dang, I just want to be there. I just want to be sitting at Toomer's when the game is on. Even if I'm not able to go in the game, and a lot of the mayors and ads have said, we know that we're trying to prepare for that. It's going to be great for these merchants because obviously COVID knocked them out a lot of the saddle. And here's the other thing, and I know you guys are thinking about this because of the different ways to watch games now, different places to watch it, how Nielsen's measuring it. I could foresee one day where you guys would allow people to go into drive-in movie environments and actually watch the game and tailgate in a safe manner. And so this is changing the way that you're going to thinking because you can continue to deliver, that content to the fans. And I'll have to confess, I was a little sad this weekend because I was, watching game day on television and I was just going, oh my gosh, this is the first season in 8 seasons. I hadn't been sitting there
in the studio,
bugging the hell out of Lee Fitting to give me a better camera angle for Coca-Cola, but I'm sure he appreciated that. But
by the way, the same thing's going to happen with music, and I mean the innovation that has occurred, that restaurants and bars have demonstrated with outdoor setups and with food trucks instead of inside dining. I'm going to a concert this weekend where at a farm in Connecticut, your ticket is an 8-foot by 8-foot plot of grass, and 2 people can be there. And my wife and I are going because you know what? It's live. It's a live music event. So like that, people will continue to figure out a way to get through And then when,
Right.
when it's totally safe, I think it goes right back to what it was.
Yeah, I think as your point, necessity is the mother of invention, and I think it's and again, I go in and propose ideas. 6 months ago, I proposed. I got thrown out of the conference room, and now they're like, well, hey, maybe there is a different way to think about this and deliver that product. Particularly, and you hit on it, your children, my son, they're the most sophisticated consumer in history, and I think we're only we're only the tip of the iceberg. And I've been really proud of like the leadership of Trevor Lawrence and the thing he's become kind of the voice in the face, and he's pushing people out of their comfort zones to sort of think about things a different way. And so, but it's based on the fact they have these platforms now. I mean, think about it. When you and I were coming through, it never crossed our minds, and the athletes that we rubbed shoulders with at school, nothing ever crossed our minds to think that way. And so I think it's I think we're living in an amazing time, an amazing period. And I think if you don't lose anybody to COVID, that it's going to be an amazing renaissance of experiences in our business when we get to the other side of it. And I think if the kids can hang tough during this period, they'll. I think it's going to be an amazing renaissance. But we could sit here and talk all day. I really know you're busy, and really appreciate your time. Burke Magnus,
Yep.
All around great guys. You guys can hear it in his voice. Like I said, he's always just been so kind to me and growing the business. EVP, programming, scheduling, the worldwide leader, ESPN. His accolades, go on and on and on. And I promise you, it won't be the last you hear of him. He's continuing. He's a rising star in our world. I hear his name everywhere I go. And I'm obviously a big fan as well. But we really do appreciate you taking the time to share your words of advice and counsel and wisdom to our students. And anything more we can do for you, or anything you think we ought to be doing for these students, we welcome the recommendations. But we thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Vince. It's great to hear your voice. And now I wish, I can't wait till we can see each other in person.
Well, I'm hoping that's sooner than later. And I know that you're working on, it's obviously probably going to be an all SEC CFP. So at some point, we'll drag Feinbaum out, and we'll figure out how to celebrate that. I say that with tongue in cheek, but we got to get we got some football coming up, and I think everybody is going to feel a little bit better, even though it's a little different. But we're still going to feel still feel a little bit better about ourselves after going through all this craziness for the last 6 months. So we thank you so much.
You got it, Vince. Thanks, man.
Thanks, Vince. Hope you enjoyed today's virtual class. We'll be back soon with another edition of Melt University 2020.